Good morning. Welcome to the Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar this morning. I will pause here a bit as people begin rolling in. It always takes a little bit for people to jump online or get into the group. And so we'll take just a few seconds here. Welcome. I hope the weather is nice wherever you're at today. One of the nice things I like about these webinars is that we get people from all over the country that join us. Generally not too many from the West Coast. It's bright and early there. But actually, Dave Sparkman, our main speaker this morning, is on the West Coast. And so I'm grateful for him for getting up at 5 or being ready before 5:30. I'm in the Minneapolis area. It's bright and sunny and blue sky outside today. And I think we're supposed to have a high of 78, which is incredible. Although they say there's some possibility of snow by Saturday. So that's the upper Midwest. Well, I'm going to get started here, and others are going to roll in and join us as well. But welcome again to the Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar this morning. Our main speaker, Dave Sparkman, will be joining us soon. I have a couple of things before that. My name is 𝙔𝙤𝙪𝙧. I lead Crossroads in the Minneapolis area, and we have other groups around the country as well. But I'm just glad that you're able to make it this morning from wherever you're joining us. And usually we have people from 7 or 8 states that are online with us on these webinars. And so I'm always grateful to have the broader groups that join us that way. But I also just wanted to share, part of our hope with Crossroads is that while we're focused on helping you succeed in your job search, we always also want to point to the hope and encouragement of Jesus Christ. And, whenever I think about that I may be getting closer to fully understanding God and what he's doing in my life, there are verses in the Bible that remind me that I'm barely scratching the surface. In the book of Job, Job had gone through terrible things in his life and questioned what God was doing. And God responded by pointing out the magnitude of who he is and what he's done. In one passage, Job says, "Behold, these are but the outskirts of his ways, and how small a whisper do we hear of him? But the thunder of his power, who can understand?" The Bible tells us that God's ways are not our ways. He's so far beyond anything I can imagine, sees everything I don't see, around corners that I can't see, and capable of so much more than I think is possible. It shouldn't surprise me. He's the creator. But in my mind, I too often put him in a box that I think I can fully understand. It's okay to question and seek answers about what he's doing in your life, but realize that sometimes you're not going to fully understand it until later. In the meantime, during the challenge of your job search, look for what he's doing and teaching you, how he's hoping to draw you to a closer relationship with him, and how he's building your character and resilience in this process. He can use these times in our lives for his purposes in all kinds of ways. He shows us his love in a great number of ways, and if we look for it, we'll see things that we may have missed otherwise. And in the long run, we're likely to see that his plan was far more substantive than anything we could have imagined on our own. Let me open us in a word of prayer, and then we'll dive into the rest of the morning here. Lord, we thank you for these times we can come together. Even though we don't see each other, we are all present virtually online. We pray that you use these minutes and this next hour for your purposes, Father, that each person take away something today that you would have them understand about you and their circumstances, and something useful that they'll be able to use in their job search to be able to be more successful in the process. Father, we're grateful for the many ways you do bless us and the ways you're working in your life that we don't even recognize. And we pray that you continue to bless each of us in Jesus' name. Amen. And let me, with that, I have a short video to share. I think so many of us, and I've seen this over the years in Crossroads, certainly, and in many other ways, that people get wrapped up, their identity of who they are is wrapped up in their career and what that career means for them. And that's their entire identity. So when they lose their career, they're not sure who they are. And that's, I think, a mistake to wrap up our identity in what we do versus who we are. And hope this gives you some perspective. Give me a moment here to share my screen. I'm not always real quick on getting this right. So just a moment. Okay, I think I got it.
What's identity? It's a sense of self and a sense of worth. What makes you feel significant? What makes you confident of your value? And if you have a sense of self and a sense of worth, we say you've got a real identity. It's an illusion to say that my identity comes from my inner feelings. People say it all the time. This is who I am. You decide who you are. Benjamin Nugent, in an essay, the New York Times said this: when good writing was my only goal in life, I made the quality of my work the measure of my worth. And then he said, for this reason, I wasn't able to read my own writing well. I couldn't tell whether something I had just written was good or bad. I needed it for it to be good in order to feel sane. I lost the ability to cheerfully interrogate how much I liked what I had written, to see what was actually on the page rather than what I would have liked to have seen or what I feared to see. In other words, when you make anything your identity, when you make a career your identity, or a particular body your identity, or a particular love relationship your identity, those things stop being good things and they start to crush you. In other words, he wanted to write. That's a good thing. He should have written. But when the writing was his identity, he said, I made the quality of my work the measure of my worth, and to feel sane, I had to look at anything I wrote and said, this is great. So I couldn't actually look at it realistically, and I couldn't certainly hear criticism. It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing. You know the place where C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity says, we're not really proud of having money, we're proud of having more money than the next person? We're not really proud of being smart, we're proud of being smarter. If you are the best violinist in your little town in Texas, and then you go to New York City and you get off at Penn Station and you realize the person who's playing the violin and begging, and people are throwing, money in the violin case, is better than you. And suddenly that high self-esteem you had because you were the best violinist in your town goes down into the toilet. Why? Because ultimately, any identity that's achieved rather than received has to be excluding. In other words, you feel better because these other people aren't as good as you. These other people aren't as enlightened as you. These other people aren't as liberal as you. These people aren't as conservative as you. These people aren't as hardworking as you. These people aren't as insightful as you. That's how you feel good about yourself, by looking at other people and trashing them. And that's how it's going to work. So what kind of identity do we need? Here's what we need. You can't take yourself and bless yourself and name yourself. You need recognition. You need somebody from outside to come in and speak to you. I know we say, no, we don't need that. Of course, we're social beings, we're relational beings. We have to do that. Even when I see people online say, I have done this and my family's rejected me, but I know who I am and this is who I am, and suddenly thousands of people on social media are cheering them. They just got, well, they didn't just say, I have decided who I want to be. No, they have a new set of cheerleaders. They just took the old set of cheerleaders and just said, forget it, I want to be part of this set. You have to have a word from outside. Somebody's got to name you. And let me go a little further. What kind of person should this be, or what kind of people should this be? Well, you need the love, and you need the approval, and you need the esteem of someone you esteem if you're going to have any self-esteem. This person, whoever it is, should not be someone who could ever let you down or disillusion you. If you get your self-worth from the academy, or from the art world, or from individuals, or from a loved one, or something like that, what happens when they disillusion you, which they might? Where does your self-worth go? This also can't be a person who's fickle, somebody who's up and down with you, depending on how well you perform. Think about this. If it's really true that the praise of the praiseworthy is above all rewards, that you only if you have the esteem of someone you esteem will you have self-esteem. Only if you have the adoration of someone who adores you. Then to know that God loves you, the Lord of the universe loves you, that would have to give you the most powerful basis for a stable identity possible. And secondly, is it based on your performance? No. If it's not based on your performance, it's not only stable, but you don't need to look down your nose at everybody else around you. In other words, the excluding aspect of your identity goes away. So how do you get that? You're adopted into God's family. That's a new identity, right? You are a citizen of heaven. Philippians 3:20. That's a new identity, right? You're united to Christ. That's a new identity, right? But I gotta say, when I just talk to you about it like that, in fact, when I just talk to myself about it like that, it's kind of abstract. But Jesus doesn't name us simply by showing up and giving us a new name or saying you're mine. He dies for us. So you lose the excluding aspect of modern identity. So you have something stable, so you have something coherent, so you know who you are. So you have an identity not achieved, which is crushing, but received. How do you do that? You got to believe he died for you. He says so. I lay down my life for my sheep. He doesn't just show up and give you a name. He dies for you. It's got to go to your imagination. It's got to be the aesthetic core of your life. You've got to learn how, when you're struggling with what the culture says about your identity, because you're not good looking enough, you're not smart enough, you're not having enough transformative sex, you're not this, you're not that. You've got to know how to pull out your identity in Christ and push it to the top of the deck. And you do that generally through imagination. I had a friend of mine some years ago that realized he was extraordinarily upset about the fact that he went to the kind of schools and he had the kind of background, and all of his colleagues had made a tremendous amount of money and had high status, and he was in a missionary ministry job and didn't have that kind of status, and he realized it was getting at him. He realized he needed to put Jesus' identity at the top of his deck, as it were. And he suddenly one day was reading in Philippians chapter 2, where it says, in the old King James, though he was in the form of God, he didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he made himself of no reputation. And it went to the man's heart. And he says, Jesus Christ lost everything. He was crucified outside the gate. He made himself of no reputation. He did that for me. Why in the world am I worried about my status and my reputation? And he was freed. See, what he did was he took it to the center of his imagination, not just here I believe it. If you don't get it into your imagination, and if you don't do it regularly through worship, through thinking, through applying it at the moment, it doesn't go to the top, and you're back into where everybody else is, cultural captivity. How are you getting through your imagination what Jesus Christ has done for you down to a naming level in your heart?
Getting everything clicked back on here. This is, I think, so important. If you're not currently an engineer or an accountant or a supply chain manager or a carpenter or a mechanic or whatever it is that you do otherwise, who are you? And I've seen people completely lose their confidence and feeling incompetent because they don't have their career currently. And I think gaining our identity from something that's eternal, from someone that loves us regardless of our earthly circumstances, is such a critical distinction that we all have to make. And that's the only way you get through the challenging times in your life and the times when things aren't lining up the way you hope or think that they should. And so I every time I see this video, I'm inspired by it. It kind of helps me reset how I think of myself. I hope it's been helpful for you too. With that, I'm really glad to introduce Dave Sparkman. Dave has been a friend for many years. He actually launched Minnesota Crossroads Career Network over 20 years ago, actually April of 2005. So this is 21 years that he launched it here. He currently serves as the executive director of the National Crossroads Organization, as well as having other businesses. David served professionally as the chief culture officer of United Health Group, only the fifth largest company in the country, not a mom and pop shop exactly. And in addition, serves as a consultant for other companies developing their culture, but has gained a lot of insight through Crossroads and through his work about what makes people unique and how do you express that. And that's what he's going to talk about today. I think actually having seen some of the slides, some of this video, I think ties into that pretty well. And so I'll let him take it from here. Thanks, Dave. I'm so glad you joined us. Dave is joining us from the San Diego area. And so it's bright and early for him there. And so I'm really grateful that he was willing to get up and do this with us this morning. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Harry. And it's not bright yet here. It's still a little, we're at dark 30 here, but I am very pleased to be here. Let's see if I can get there we go. Because this topic is one that is near and dear to my heart. It's one that has continued to develop for me personally, and it is one that is definitely developed from a Crossroads perspective of how we present that. And Harry, that video was right on point. I mean, I wrote down several quotes of what Keller had to say, and I think it'll play in very well with us today talking about unique distinctions. So as we get in, one of the things I like to do is to start out with just a quick reminder, somewhat for myself, but hopefully for all of you as well. At Crossroads Career, our purpose is to help people find and follow Jesus. That's what we think is the differentiator. There are a lot of different places you can go to find job search assistance or assistance for finding and discovering your purpose, but we think Jesus Christ is the differentiator. We want everyone to realize that they are a masterpiece that God has put here on earth. And my presentation to you today is one that I'm hopeful will just make that so clear in your mind. And I'm hopeful that you will see some things that you're not doing, like I've discovered, that could help present me in a better way to the marketplace. And then we want to do this by educating, equipping, and encouraging people to hear God calling. So that's why we're here, what we're here to do. And of course, there are ways that we do that, how we do that. We want to make sure that we live out our values as we work here at Crossroads Career. And the value that strikes me today, particularly, is the value of stewardship, being faithful with the resources entrusted to us. Every one of us have been given things from God that if we are trying to serve God, glorify God, and do things for the good of others, we have an obligation. I feel an obligation to share the gifts that He's given me with others. And that's why I'm here today. And that's what I'm hopeful to point out to you, is that there are probably things that He has given you, endowed you with, that if you're like most people, you're not fully maybe recognizing or playing out to the way that they could be presented in the market. And so that's what we're going to be trying to do today. So to get us started with that little quick setting, I'm going to move my screen up here so you can see these slides a little better. If you look at a quiz, and obviously given our venue, we're not going to have the chance to interact, but if I was looking at your resume, if we had a chance to go round the horn and hear from each of you, what would your answers be? What's on your resume that sets you apart? What's that interview question that caused you to stumble? What do you think the odds are of landing a job that fits you well? I can't begin to tell you the number of people I've spoken to in my career that are unfulfilled at work. They're in a job, they dread going to it. I was one of those people in one of my jobs years and years ago. And it is one of the most discouraging things I've ever been through. Although when I got laid off or fired, that was also pretty discouraging. So last question, the secret to matching your resume to those job descriptions, and we're going to talk a little bit about job descriptions. They're a fun topic for me to rail on. So if you were jotting down some answers, which I hope you were, about how you would respond if we were in a group to be able to discuss these, if you're like most people, it would leave you wanting. It left me wanting because I didn't have answers for some of these things. When I was interviewing for a job, after having interviewed after the downfall of Arthur Andersen years and years ago, I found myself unemployed for the first time in my career. And I had interviewed literally thousands of people. So this is no big deal, me going to an interview. And all of a sudden I realized being on the other side of the desk is not quite so much fun as being on the side where you're asking the question, you're making the decisions. And you quickly realize when you're unemployed that you control almost nothing in the process. But what you do control is yourself and what you are able to present. And so that's what we're going to go after today. When we think about the hiring process, the goal is actually fairly simple to state. It's matching what you do best to what they need most. If they need something badly and they see clearly that you have what they need badly, boy, you're in. The challenge is that's not always a clean process. To distinguish yourself is very difficult. Now, when you look at these pictures, these images on the screen, some of those images may strike you in a positive way. Maybe the golf ball on the tee. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the square peg in the round hole. Oh boy, that's not where I'd want to be. Maybe even the burgundy umbrella amidst the black ones. You'd rather fit in with the crowd. You'd rather not stand out like that. And I would encourage you to ask yourself this question. Do you feel that the objects here stand out in a positive way? Or, they're just kind of the odd duck out. They kind of are the anomaly. That's not what you want to do. What I would submit to you today is that when you're looking for a new job or you're unemployed or unfulfilled, that's the market that Crossroads is after. How do you see yourself and how do you present yourself to others? And what I have found, and I think Harry and I have talked about this over the years, people do not do themselves justice. They undersell themselves. Sometimes that's not even apparent to them. And that's what I'm hopeful we'll get after today. So even though the objective is fairly clear, what you do best to what you do what they need most, that's what we're striving to do. We want, and you do that by standing out in a positive way, not being arrogant or obstreperous, but standing out in a good way. But the path is just a mess. It's a spaghetti scramble. There's you on the left, and you're trying to get to the job, and ATS, the applicant tracking system that most organizations have, is just one of many obstacles before you can get that job. So how do you navigate through that? And what I would suggest is that unless your tools and your preparation is well done, your odds are not as high as they could be. Now, there are many, many things, as I mentioned earlier, outside of our control. So how do we do the best job that we can with what we can control? And that's our preparation, and that's our presentation of who we are and what we've done. So as the video from Keller talked about, who we are, that may be a separate issue, but I believe that when you're authentic and transparent and vulnerable in a positive way in the process, trying to be authentic in what you've done, I think that will come out. Your identity will come out. Bob Goff, who is an author of the book Love Does and Everyone Always, he has a podcast called the Dream Big Podcast. And I've enjoyed listening to him over the years where he talks about a person's identity. And he says, when your identity, who you are, is what happens when you strip away everything that you're known for. Everything that you present yourself as with what you've done, when you strip all that away, what's left is your identity. I encourage you, just on the heels of Keller, probably not nearly as articulate as he did, but I'd encourage you to think about that. So we're going to talk about how do we get through this mess? How can we make sure that your preparation and presentation are as good as possible? Because the challenges, in addition to the applicant tracking system, are just a few that I've listed here. Number one, human beings. If you are like me, you've been a job where you and your boss just didn't quite fit. Or it may be the overall organization. It's just something doesn't quite feel right. Matthew McConaughey, the famous actor, was giving a commencement address at the University of Houston, and he mentioned this quote. He would say, human beings, we, all of us, are the trickiest mammals on the planet. Even when we think, and I was just intrigued by that statement, when I think about human beings, whether it's immediate family, all the way to the people that I've just met, it's very hard to understand human behavior. So no matter how steeped you are in psychology, I would guess that human beings still continue to either perplex you or puzzle you with their behaviors. Then you throw people together in organizations, you mix them all up, you call that a culture as to what comes out in the workplace, the aggregate of all of those human beings in an organization. That makes it even more puzzling. Then you get into a role and the mission of the organization, the clarity of what you're supposed to do, the expectations. Many times those are not aligned. In my years of being in HR advising executives, most of the time that I found where they and their direct reports were not seeing eye to eye was because the expectations had not been clearly defined. So even though the executive thought that they had done it, a few questions in, usually less than 5, it was pretty clear that the expectations were not clear. The roles, this gets into the job descriptions. I think job descriptions are on one level just horrible. I think they're necessary. But I know when I was in corporate America, I had to approve all the job descriptions before a position was posted for the segment of business that I had responsibility for, or when I was at Arthur Andersen, the office that I was in. And most of the time, the job descriptions were what we called CPA'd. They were cut, pasted, and assembled from other job descriptions. Now, with AI, you can hopefully improve that a little bit by actually speaking into the system as to what you're looking for, and it will help you come up with something that's very clear. But most of the time, my experience has been that job descriptions are necessary evils to get the job posted. They're not being used for what they should be used for, which is to give clear expectations of the role. It should be very clear from the job description what the company needs most. But most of the time, I would suggest that if you had the gall or guts to ask the hiring manager, what's the most important thing on the job description that you're looking for, that hiring manager would not even remember the bullet points that are on the job description. And yet you think about the effort, the energy, the frustration, the anxiety that goes around each of us trying to spruce up our resume to fit the job description. And on one level, it's very necessary. The applicant tracking system will screen out or score you on how your resume fits the job description. But is that really selling yourself in the best way? Is that really presenting yourself in the manner of who you are and what you've done can best be presented so that the company sees that they need you the most? I would submit that that is not the case. And so what I believe has happened over time, and again, part of it necessity, we have dumbed down our resumes. When I look at resumes, most of them look the same. What I'm going to suggest to you today is there's a different way to go that I think is far more compelling. You still have to go through the basic levels to be able to have your job description, fit the job description. But I would also suggest that if you're only relying on the applicant tracking system and submitting applications, that is just not the best strategy. The best strategy is to network. And when you're live with a person and you're talking to them and you're presenting your resume in perhaps a more condensed form with truly who you are and what you've done in a fashion that is much more of a feature of you, as a product in essence, you're going to get better results. The fifth challenge that we have is AI. I have not been through an AI interview yet, although I hear they're out there. I can't imagine just talking into a screen with nobody being able to, well, I guess I am doing that with no visual representation back. But it's one thing when you're presenting, it's another thing when you're trying to get some clue of whether you're getting through to that hiring manager or not when there's a major decision that is being made that affects your life. The last challenge is just the market. I think the market has been up and down and all around. I think it's a very volatile time in our employment, in our history. But I can go back through 40 years of corporate work, and I've seen the same thing again and again. There's always a challenge. There's always turmoil. There's always unrest. There's always uncertainty. Organizations are trying to figure things out. They're not always the best at it. They don't always function in the right way because, go back to number one, they're full of tricky humans that change their minds, that make judgments, they gain insights. All of these things is just natural to who we are. So it's a very challenging field that you may be in right now if you're unemployed or contemplating getting into if you're unfulfilled. So that's the context. So now let's get into what I am hopeful will be some practical help for you to navigate those challenges. So I'd like you to have a pen and paper, a pencil and paper, something that you can just jot yourself some thoughts down because I'll be referring back to these exercises as we go through the presentation this morning. And when I talk about unique distinctions, here's exercise one that gives you the context for that. So let's pretend that I'm going to interview you tomorrow at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I am the hiring manager. I have had a job description. I've got your resume. And you find out that after that, I'm also interviewing 5 other people in 30-minute increments. One at 8, you're at 8 o'clock. The next one's at 8:30. The next one after that's at 9. You're going to roll through, I'm going to roll through 6 interviews. So by 11 o'clock, I have 6 candidates that I will have considered. I have a lunch scheduled with my colleague after that. And I'm going to debrief that colleague with the interviews that I performed. And I'm an experienced seasoned interview. I know how to get the most out of people in that 30 minutes with a behavioral interviewing and other techniques. What will I remember about you when I'm having lunch with my colleague at noon? You're the first one up. There's 5 other people that have now given their pitch, made their best efforts to convince me that they're the right person for what I need most. Why will I remember you? So I'd like you to I'm going to pause for about a few seconds and just allow you to gather your thoughts and jot some things down. And I'm going to show you some things later on that you'll be able to compare your notes to yourself to what I might suggest for you. So let's just pause for a moment. I'm going to get a swig of coffee and I'll give you about 30 seconds to jot some thoughts down as to what will I remember about you that's distinctive, that's distinguished about you versus those other candidates. Remember, you're all qualified, or else I, as the hiring manager, wouldn't be talking to you. You've already been screened. So they have good, strong resumes, just like you do. What will I remember about you? Let's take a few seconds to jot your thoughts down. All right. Hopefully you've had a chance to jot at least a few words down, a few phrases down that would cause me to think of you as distinctive. So now let's go to exercise number 2. Again, I'd love you to write a few thoughts down. How would you describe a Tesla sedan so that the person who's listening to you, without seeing it, will know that you're describing a Tesla sedan? So you're going to describe a vehicle to someone without telling them it's a Tesla, and we need them to know it's a Tesla sedan versus any other car in the market. So I won't pause as long on this one, but if you probably would not say, well, it's a fast blue electric car, right? You'd have to get more descriptive. You have to get more in the weeds as to what to identify the Tesla as being distinctly a Tesla. Well, a buddy of mine, Steve, owns a Tesla sedan. He's a Christian, so he doesn't worship the sedan. But if he wasn't clearly identified as a Christian, I might think he has an idol there. But he loves his Tesla. He has named it. He calls it the Millennial Falcon. I mean, he thinks it's phenomenal. If I were to give Steve this question, how would you describe your Tesla to me? First of all, he would get very animated because he loves the Tesla. His energy would come out very clearly because he's talking about something that he's quite fond of. And he wouldn't say it's a fast blue electric car. He would say, Dave, this vehicle is so fast. It could go from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. And literally, when I push the accelerator down, the G-force will throw you back in the seat. It is a powerful machine. A second one, it is such a sleek design. The door handles are built into the body of the door. So to open the door, you literally push the handle on one end, it will pop out, and then you can open the door, and it has that nice kerthunk to it. Not a clang, a kerthunk when you close the door. The dashboard is an LED screen. It's bigger than my home monitor. I mean, I can see all sorts of data about my vehicle. And when I put in my map, I don't have to squint and look down to see it. It is clearly mapped out as to where I'm going. And the way the vehicle cools itself, there's a little internal fan that when the vehicle gets too warm, it turns on to cool the vehicle down and keep it at the right temperature. I mean, he could go on and on. That when you put those descriptors together, the only answer is a Tesla sedan. How could that be true for each of us when we're describing ourselves? If we are good stewards of recognizing what God has given to us, and when I'd encourage you to think very broadly and deeply about what God has given to you. He's given you and I the experiences in our careers. He's given us our talents, our skills, our abilities, our intuitions, our motivations, our inspirations, the values that we have, the purpose that we might be able to identify, the mission for our life or our calling. All of these things come from him. So if we're going to be a good steward of those and project those into the marketplace and use those, then we should be able to describe them. What I have found in exercises 1 and 2 is that most people don't really come up with descriptors very easily about themselves. And you may not be familiar with a Tesla sedan, so no problem with number 2 not having much to say. But as you listen to me describe the features that Steve would use, they're very precise, they're very clear, they're very in-depth. They're not surface level. And what I have found is that many times when we're talking to individuals, and I found this to be true with the thousands of people I interviewed, when I would ask them a question about an accomplishment that they had performed, I would get vagaries. I would get broad brush strokes. I usually had to probe pretty deeply to literally understand what they individually did to cause the success of the accomplishment. And I think the reason that happens is maybe, and I'm not a psychologist, but my guess is that we are fairly conditioned not to describe ourselves too well because have been conditioned to think of ourselves as not being a proud or boastful person. So we talk about ourselves in terms of the team. You know, we want There's no I in team. Okay, great. But when you're interviewing, they need to know about you. So how do we make that more clear? So that's what we want to get into. So let's lay the groundwork now you've been through the quiz and the exercise to give yourself some context. Let's get some definition. Unique is being the only one of its kind, unlike anything or anyone else. Distinction. It's a contrast or difference between similar things or people. You were one of 6 candidates for me to interview, starting with you at 8 o'clock in the morning. How will you be set apart? So whether you're a purpose seeker or a job seeker, how do you present yourself in a flow that makes the most of your personal experiences flavored with a little of your talent, your skills and abilities, not the TSA service at the airport, and a hint of results? How can you present yourself in a way that is uniquely distinctive from all those other candidates? So I'm going to give you 6 practical steps, hopefully help you get some sense out of this, out of the scrabble that may be going through your mind. If you're like many, that's the way it was when I was trying to sort through all this. Let's quickly go through those 6 steps. I'm going to give you some examples. And then Harry, if we do have time to open it up for questions in the chat or other, I can go off screen and we can go through that. So step number 1 is to pray. Do we really talk with the Lord about this? And I grew up the son of a pastor. I was in church a lot. So I was very familiar with prayer. And my perception of prayer was a very serious matter. You are coming to God with your request, with your praise of God. And this was back in the late 60s, 70s, and people would pray with words like these and thous. And I was, quite frankly, a little bit intimidated when I would talk to or try to talk to Jesus. It was, "Dear Jesus." There were certain phrases that I memorized. There were things, it just wasn't natural. I encourage you to be natural and just have a conversation with God. You are looking for some things to happen. You're looking for some insights. It's not a recipe or a formula to get a job. There are so many challenges filled with tricky human beings and organizations, but there are signs that can exist. And how do we find our way and our path through this hunt in the woods for the next job? So first step, get the groundwork, fundamental, talk with the Lord, let him know your heart about this. Number 2, with a piece of paper, capture your thoughts. I've talked to so many people over the years where I don't know what to do. I've tried this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm fearful. All of those are natural. But we can continue to talk about it and float all over the place, or we can start to get things on a piece of paper and say, let's capture those thoughts. Don't judge yourself. Don't stop yourself. One of the best rules of brainstorming is not to criticize anything that you brainstorm or someone else brainstorms. So if you thought about, well, what are my unique features? What are the attributes, the talents, the skills, the abilities, the experiences that help me be unique? List all those out on a piece of paper. Allow yourself to keep going. When you come to a close, leave for an hour, come back and jot a few more thoughts down, but get a good long list of things that you think could qualify you yourself as being distinctive. Then now's the time you start to give it a critique. What is it that's so distinctive about them? So if you go back to our exercise number 1, perhaps you had phrases like, well, I am so collaborative in working with others. I'm a great team player. I have a wonderful work ethic. My communications, I love this on a resume, exceptional communication skills. Okay. The problem is all 5 of those other people that interviewed after you said the same thing. Unless they're distinctive, and I'm going to get to how that gets to be distinctive by tying it to your own experiences, which only you in all of the world have experienced. Once you get the confluence of that, if you go back to our definition, it's the flowing together of those things that makes you distinctive. And that's why no one else can say that. But so on your list, what are those words or those phrases that you start to combine perhaps to make them distinctive? Then I'd encourage you to stop and reflect for a moment. Why? Why are these things on the list? Do you just feel a pull in your heart? Is the Holy Spirit prompting you with some things? Do you have a natural affinity for loving automobiles, and that's why you're a mechanic? Do you just want to endow the next generation with experiences and knowledge, and that's why you're a teacher? Whatever those things are, God put those things there in your heart. What are your spiritual gifts? On our site, crossroadscareer.org, we do a weekly blog, and a few weeks ago I did one on spiritual gifts that you might be able to go through and start to figure out, well, how has God gifted you in the supernatural area, which he gives to us to advance the kingdom of God in the gospel? What do you have a passion about? Perhaps you love to garden. Perhaps you love to read books. Whatever it may be, how does that piece together? And I'm going to give you some examples as to how you might consider putting some of these things together in a little bit. But stop and reflect, start to piece some things together, but try to understand why you put the bullets on the page, and particularly for the ones that you've now evaluated as being distinctive. Then let's get some reframing. Let's get another perspective. Share it with a friend. All of my, we have 4 children. All of our children are now young adults. They're in the workforce, and they come back, and of course they have bad days at work. Dad, I never knew. What is go? And what I have tried to counsel them is that all feedback is useful. It may not be accurate, but it's useful. To understand more fully how someone has perceived you or the work you've done is very, very helpful to understand. You may not agree with the assessment, and that's fine. And the person that did the assessing may actually be a little bit hallucinating. But let's get the feedback. So how do they perceive what you share with them on the list? Don't just share it with one friend. Share it with 10. Share it with 20. Get as much feedback as you can, because that will help sharpen your presentation of your features. Which leads to step 6, lather, rinse, and repeat. Start to use it. You'll start to find that certain words feel very good to say for you. Other words feel foreign. Well, then throw them out. Try something else. I would suggest that these words, these phrases, these sentences should show up in your resume, your elevator pitch, and in your interview responses. If they're not, I would also suggest that you're not presenting yourself in the most compelling way that you could. So these are things that you're going to use in every element of your job search. So, quick summary: pray, capture your thoughts, question your thoughts, start to evaluate them, stop and reflect as to why you put them on the list, reframe it with other people, and then start to use it, and you're going to start to get more application. So now we're going to get up close and practical here. What you see on the screen are summaries from real resumes that I've received over the last couple of years. And I went and just cut and pasted some summaries. I've mixed them up a bit, so don't try to, oh, I know George. That number 1 is George. No, they're all mixed up a bit, but these are actual words. And this is also the format on their resume. Their name is there with the contact information, and then it gives a, summary of their experience. Well, if you're like me, when you saw this screen come up, you're like, ooh, there's a lot of words up there. And look at the kinds of words. They're not words you use every day. They're words that are business words, resume speak, let's interview really successfully. I mean, we don't talk like this normally, but something happens in our brains so that we put these on our resumes, right? Remember, recruiters are people too. When they look at this stuff, they don't have time to read. Now, as the applicant tracking system sifts through things, and AI now does even more, yes, they can sift through it in a split second. And then what are they going to pull out? A bunch of resumes speak. What I would suggest is there's a better way to do it. There's a better way to get that top third of the front page of your resume to speak more clearly into the recruiter and into the hiring manager. Again, because if you're going to go through the best strategy of networking, What's going to pop for someone? What's going to highlight to them not only what you've done, but also a little bit about who you are? So on the next slide is me taking some liberties with different people of who I know and who I have helped advise over the years, including one of my children, on some unique distinctions that I would suggest would be at the top of the screen of a resume in place of this common summary. Now, here's a list of them. I would only suggest 3 to 5 of these bullet points would be at the top of the resume. So if you only saw 3 to 5 bullet points, how long does it? Very long. What it hopefully would trigger you to think about is, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, number 2, CFO of a struggling company while owning a daycare with 30 kids. What kind of character is that? How many CFOs own and operate a daycare at the same time that they're doing a full-time job? Bullet point number 3 is my daughter. She was a collegiate soccer player, and when she graduated, she went to physical therapy school. She got out, and then she was going to interview for a job with some physical therapist. Dad, can you look at my resume? I looked at her resume. Nothing about her collegiate soccer career was on her resume. Huge miss, in my opinion. Think of how hard you work to become a collegiate soccer player or a collegiate player of any kind. And think of the attributes: persistence, dedication, creativity, all sorts of discipline. All of those are all positive attributes that you would want to portray to a person that you're interviewing with. Number 5, well, that was me. I'm a retreaded CPA who became an HR person. That's a fairly unique combination. And so with each of these bullet points, think of them as filters to get to a confluence of which are only you. So if I asked you, how many former CPAs do you know that have become HR people, the population gets winnowed down really quick. If you go to bullet point number 1, how many people do you know that have trained at Juilliard, the famous musical school, and now they're a leader focused in technology and innovation? Boy, again, it starts to get funneled down really quick. How many D1 players do you know that have been captains of their teams and turned it from a losing record to a winning record? Boy, you start with a broad funnel, you start to narrow it down, the combination of which is only going to be you. A gentleman that I talked to out here on the West Coast, I should have numbered these, but it's like the 6th bullet down, the Marine rifle marksman, finishing 5th out of 427 consultants. He didn't have anything about himself being a marksman on his resume. Well, how many people want a marksman? Well, let's talk about the attributes of what it takes to be a marksman, let alone in the top 10, top 5 out of 427 within the Marines. So first of all, you're a Marine. Now you've shrunk the population. Now you're a marksman. It's smaller. Now you start to get to the point where you think about those attributes of discipline, precision, patience, calmness. There are a lot of positive things that are represented by that particular bullet point. Oh, let's go down to the 4th from the bottom. Undergrad at Harvard, master's from Temple, law degree from Oxford. When I was back at Grace Church doing small groups, way back in the day when we were in person doing these groups, we did an exercise called resume review. In this review, you would pass out a resume face down, the group of 6 to 10 people. When you said go, they turned the resume over. They had 30 seconds to read and process as much as they possibly could. Then at the end of 30 seconds, you say stop, you turn it over, and you ask them 2 questions. Number 1, what do you remember? What do you remember about what you just read? Number 2, what suggestions would you give to the author of the resume so they can improve the resume? We call it resume review. One of the guys had this experience, undergrad from Harvard, master's from Temple. It was on page 3. No one had seen it. Okay? Regardless of that person's other experiences, what does that tell you about that person? Pretty smart guy. Should we consider that individual, in my example, for United Health Group, even though he had no healthcare experience? Yeah, we need smart people at United Health Group. So let's get it on page 1. It's a uniquely distinctive quality. Second from the bottom. Oh, I know this guy. His name is Harry Urschel. 20 years over 20 years as an executive recruiter, and he was leading a job transition ministry at the church the entire time. What does that tell you about Harry? He's not just your normal recruiter, in my humble opinion. So another one is a guy that's on our Crossroads board. He turned serial entrepreneur. He experienced 25 jobs by the time he was 34. Couldn't keep a job, decided I might as well start a company and create the work that I do. Tim Kraus, great guy, very innovative, very creative. That's unique, that quality. So when you think, if I picked 3 of these bullet points and put them on the same resume at the top, you're going to start to see a blend of the talent, skills, and abilities, the experiences, a hint of results that come together that would hopefully say, I want to know more about that. Well, that then leads you into the star stories and the discussion and the questions in an interview. So it lays the groundwork for you to program for the hiring manager what questions they're going to ask you, because they're going to want to know more about some of these bullet points, particularly when they are put together in 3 to 5 bullets at the top of your resume. So if you think back to exercise 1 and you put words like collaborative or team player or very innovation and product development, or a very caring school teacher, all of those are true, but they're probably not distinctive. Other people can say the same thing. So how do we get these to where you're the only person in the entire world, the only person on this planet that has this confluence of skills, talents, and abilities put together with experiences that company could need most? So, wrapping up, exercise number 3. Okay, Dave, but when I go into this interview, they have the questions. I have to answer the questions. I can see maybe how I talk about the 3 things on my resume because I control the resume. I don't control the interview. I would suggest that there are ways that while you don't control the interview, you can manage your way through the interview. And it's called a bridge technique. Won't take a lot of time to go into the depth of this, but you've seen it happen with politicians in a negative way, where no matter what question they're asked, they turn to their message. So glad you asked that question. And off they go, and they don't even answer the question. Well, in an interview, you got to answer the question. However, when you have your 3 to 5 bullet points of what your unique distinctions are, I find that it's fairly easy to weave those into your responses. And here's some of the transitional phrases to bridge your answer into your qualifications of the unique distinctions that you see here on the screen. Last slide. God gave us everything that we have. Everything, even the things, I'm a self-made man. No, we're not. God gave it to us, and we are God's masterpiece. So as we go out, shouldn't we be good stewards of what he gave us? Shouldn't we represent ourselves to the marketplace in the very best way possible? And I would suggest that most people I speak to, most resumes I review, are not doing justice to the person that it's supposed to be selling. We undersell ourselves, and not in a bragging way, but to truly reflect what God gave us is, I would suggest, our obligation to the marketplace. And it benefits us to hopefully get the right job so that you can minister in that workplace to your full experience and possibility. That is it for today. Harry, I'm going to stop sharing, and if we have questions in the chat or if we have time, I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely, we have time. And if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll address them. It's, such a great topic, because I think, you've interviewed and seen thousands of resumes over the years. I have as well. And they all start looking the same. And, people put, as you mentioned, I'm a great communicator, or I'm a strategic thinker, or a hard worker. And the thing is, people that aren't any of those things still put those things on their resume.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I see them and I see that and I think, okay, yeah, says you, but how you can demonstrate those things through things you've done and accomplishments that you should put on your resume, but just stating a bunch of adjectives like that are the same that everybody else puts on doesn't distinguish you at all. And I love the idea, and it does make a difference to put something that might not be directly career related, like your daughter putting the fact that she was captain of the soccer team in college is a significant characteristic of the kind of person she is, but doesn't necessarily speak directly to her ability to do physical therapy effectively. And we all have those things, whether it's, and I think sometimes people miss the things that they have done that do make them unique. I mean, if it's coaching your kids basketball team, in grade school or anything like that, I mean, that teaches you, shows that you can herd cats, right? I mean, it's gives you a lot of things that are transferable to the workplace too. Somebody's asking, is there a specific heading that you recommend we put the distinctions under, accomplishments, or some other category?
Yeah, good question. I would suggest that underneath your contact information, you just lead off without necessarily taking up resume space by saying what they are. It's just, here are the features. And think of it when I'll pick on a store selling mattresses. There's one in Eden Prairie where I used to live that, you mattress discounters, you drive by and their window is filled with headlines. You drive by a car place filled with, oh, APR of this amount. These are your headlines. So I think to have, and Harry, I'd like your opinion. You could leave it under summary. You could just leave it unidentified, because a person glancing at it will immediately see that they're reflective of you overall, without having to have too many hints because they're the headlines. But Harry, I'd like to hear your comment on that as well.
I agree with you. I do think you need to have not a section heading, but I do think it's important to have a headline on your resume in terms of what you do, whether you're project manager or an accounting professional or sales professional or something. Yeah. As you know, Dave, that when a company gets hundreds of applicants for a job, that doesn't mean all those applicants are even in the ballpark of the job. There's a lot of people that apply for anything and everything. And so when you're looking at a resume, you at least want to put in the category, okay, this person is in the ballpark of what I'm looking for, and then go into the detail of everything else. But so some kind of heading at the top of the resume, but then you can just start listing those kinds of distinctives for sure.
Yeah. Also, Harry, if people, while we're waiting for potentially other questions, if people would ever want to talk with me about their own personal resume and have a conversation, I'm wide open to doing that. I mean, this is part of what I do. I love doing this. I can get quite excited about it. Hopefully that it came through a little bit. So if any of you are interested, you can reach me at dave@crossroadscareer.org or davesparkman16@gmail.com.
Certainly worthwhile taking advantage of that. Any other questions or comments? I think for most people, it takes a little time to kind of think through, what have I done in life? And so many times we minimize those things that are really significant, that we think, well, everybody does this, or not that everybody does this, but it's just easy for me, so it must not be special, when in fact the fact that it is easy for you is special.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because going back to our step 5, where you share it with others, most of the time we are not our best salesperson. We don't sell ourselves that well. It's just foreign to us. Almost every one of those bullet points that was on my list of unique distinctions came out from a conversation of me with that individual, trying to flesh it out. Like the gentleman who had graduated from Juilliard, and it was a different music company, but they are, it was just down there as part of his education. It wasn't really highlighted. I mean, it's like, what? You're a CEO of a technology company and your undergrad degree is from Juilliard? What? Well, now you put those together. I'm going to remember that. I will never forget that. And so talking it through with someone, to your point, Harry, coming it up with your own is a challenge. And one thing, Harry, you and I have said for years is when you're in a transition, don't do it alone. Get others to help, and we want to help. We want to do. Both Harry and I have been in this position. We know all too well the pain and the anxiety and stress that comes through that. So we want to be of support and help to you any way we can.
I had somebody in one of my groups one time that graduated from Princeton, and for most people, if you've went to a state school or most other colleges, after you've got 4 or 5 years of experience, you put that on the bottom of your resume, not at the top. But if you went to an Ivy League school, that ought to be at the top of your resume throughout your entire career. That's a bell ringer that just most people can't claim. Same thing, somebody else that had a Harvard MBA. That's obviously pretty rarefied air up there. And so you want people to recognize that, and that will attract attention even if you're 30 years into your career. Great comments about this has been very helpful. Asking for your contact information. I put your email address in there.
Thank you. Yeah.
And again, asking about, do you put bullet points in the summary section or just weave them in the rest of the resume? I'd say both but not repeating them. But if there's additional ones that you want to put in context of particular jobs, weave that in there as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've done unique things in jobs. People that led an employee group that does charity work or something like that in their organizations. That's significant because it shows you put in extra effort beyond just the tasks you're given for your particular job.
Yeah. When I was at one of our workshops, Harry, and I was staying after helping with people with their resumes, and I spoke to a young woman, and turns out I was still at United Health Group at the time, and she had worked at United Health Group. And she had United Health Group on her resume. I said, well, what did you do there? And, again, it was somewhat reflected in the resume, but it turns out she was a master black belt. It was not on her resume that she had that certification. And it's like, whoa. Well, long story shortened, the end result of that is I knew the guy that she used to work for at United Health Group. He was still there. He didn't know that she was in the market. We connected the dots. She started working at United Health Group again because she was a very valuable commodity, if you will. And yet it wasn't even reflected on her resume. So you just never know. And that's why having, to your point, Harry, talking to someone else can help you flesh some things out, can help you get creative, can help you be bold about saying who God created you to be.
Absolutely. Someone's asking about putting the title on the resume. I don't think it's helpful necessarily to put the specific title you're applying for, but rather more generic form of what you do. Now, sometimes it's one and the same, but a project manager, for example, but you can put accounting professional or sales professional, something more generic than just the specific title, because then it starts looking like you're customizing it too much, that you're calling that. And sometimes companies have very unique titles as well for the roles. And so I would put a generic form of what you do as the heading on the resume, just to make it clear, though, that you are in the ballpark of what you're applying for, and not, I've had, I remember, I don't, in the recruiting I do, I very rarely ever post jobs online or anything else. But years ago, I had a position for a corporate controller, which is their chief accountant, and had that as a posting online, and I got applications from truck drivers and a plumber and all kinds of things. And actually, talk about unique distinctions. When the truck driver happened to work for Tyson Chicken, and he would run the live chickens from the farm to the processing plant. And his achievement, which is, I suppose, good for what he does, is that he had the record for the lowest number of chickens that died in transit to the processing plant. I'm not sure how that qualified him for a corporate controller, but it was a good, unique distinction.
Got their attention, right?
Exactly, right. Yeah, another example is I know somebody here locally that she earlier in her life was Miss Indiana for the Miss USA competition. That's a big deal. Not related at all to her current career, but that takes a lot of effort and work and discipline to achieve something like that, and absolutely worth calling out on your resume. Now, obviously, not everybody has something as significant as Miss Indiana, but we all have something that's unique to us.
Exactly right, and particularly when it's the confluence is the best word I can come up with. When you have those 3 to 5 bullet points, the combination of those is you're the only person on the planet with that combination, and that's what I think people, we joke the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. It doesn't take long to start to winnow down, including our own representation. So I have found generally in my conversations, Harry, nobody really comes up with it on the first try. It usually takes multiple iterations and multiple sharings. And then that's why you got to lather, rinse, and repeat. You got to use it and see what feels comfortable with you. But, when I say, when I call myself a retreaded CPA turned HR, that immediately puts people in a frame of mind that I'm not your classically trained HR guy. Now, that could be seen as a detriment in my experience level. And for me, that's okay, because if they want the classically trained guy, I'm not the guy, and I don't want that job. I will not fit for you. I am not your classically trained. I do things differently in HR. And if you don't like that, then we should get that out of the way up front, because I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and you want what you want. Let's just filter me out.
That's such a great point, in the sense that I think people want to be qualified for every job they think is in the ballpark of what they do. And the fact is we're not. And very often when we don't get selected for a job, it's because the employer sees that more clearly than we do. And the reality is, if you did land that job, it probably would not be successful. It'd be a disaster for you. And so it's okay many times when you don't get a job, because it may well be that really wasn't the right fit for you.
Well, I talked to a person last week, and they have a friend who's in a job that they hate. So even though they were qualified, and they said that the job description didn't really represent all that well what the actual work was. I mean, I've heard that story so many times. I mean, I remember when I left at Anderson, I was asked the interview question, well, what are you looking for, right? And I kind of became very authentic with him, as I said, probably my worst fear is not the length of time it may take me to get a job, although that does cause anxiety. It's landing in a job that is not a good fit for me, because I loved what I did at Anderson. I've tasted what it feels like to go to work every day, excited to go to work. I need and want that again. So that's something that the more precise you can be with who you are and what you've done, and that's to me where unique distinctions can come out to help you.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds great. With that, we'll move on. I want to do a brief overview of everything else you can take advantage of in Crossroads Career Network. As you probably gathered from the discussion with Dave and I, there are 2 organizations distinct from each other. One is the crossroadscareer.org. Please do check out that website. That's the national organization that which provides materials for local groups, but also has an awful lot and is more directed towards individual job seekers. There's a ton of opportunities there to gain help individually, and there's resources available, an excellent blog with a lot of great content. There's all kinds of other resources that you definitely want to check out at crossroadscareer.org. Locally here in the Minneapolis area, we have Minnesota mncrossroads.com, and there's a lot of resources here. Everything we do is free to you. There's no charge, same thing on a national basis. And we want to be able to support you through your job search. I'm grateful that we have a team of over 40 people that volunteer in some way, and it enables us to do a lot of different things. Let me share my screen here, and we'll run through slides so you can get a sense of what's available to you. And put that up. Hopefully you're seeing that. But everything that we offer through Crossroads is represented on our website at mncrossroads.com. There's a schedule of events coming up. There's topics on different seminars that are coming up. Some of it is in person, some of it is online. I'll run through all that for you. Locally here in the Minneapolis area, there's a number of companies that know what we do, and so we have a job board, and they are glad to post positions on there because they've hired great people through Crossroads. And so check out the job board regularly, and you'll potentially see some things on there that might make sense for you to pursue. When you apply or reach out to somebody at those organizations, let them know that you found out about it through Crossroads, and that'll encourage them to post even more. Kind of our cadence each month on different topics we offer for seminars like this is the first Thursday of each month at 7:30 a.m. We meet in person only at Grace Church in Eden Prairie, and we have a topic like this for some speaker that comes in on a job search topic. We have our networking group that meets in person after that, and it's a chance for everybody to share contacts and leads and ideas to help each other through finding the right connections in their job search. And then we have Brad Markwell comes in and talks about financial considerations during job transition. There are things that you can do financially that can really help in this process as well. So check that out each month, first Thursday if you're local here in the Twin Cities area. Second Thursday evening of each month at 7 p.m., we have the same thing in Woodbury at Woodbury Lutheran Church. And they meet in person at 7 p.m. on the second Thursday evening, and we have a topic and a speaker that comes in there. And then the third Thursday morning, which you're on right now, is an online webinar, which you can participate in from home with your cup of coffee and in your jammies and slippers if you want. But I'm glad that you're here today. You can catch a new topic each month. All of these are always listed on the seminars page of our website at mncrossroads.com. So check out that for details. On a weekly basis, our Networking with Grace group meets at 9 o'clock every Thursday morning. As I mentioned, the first Thursday is in person at Grace Church, but every following Thursday each month is through a Zoom meeting online. And so you can participate from home that way. And so again, it's a great opportunity to share contacts and leads with each other. Ask for if anybody knows of contacts at a particular company you're applying to or pursuing, and you can get great help. It's generally led by Wes Tang on our team, who does a tremendous job of helping making sure everybody walks out with something each week. So check that out. Participate as often as you can. We have one-on-one coaching available, and this is something you sign up for online. One of our volunteers will reach back out to you and set up a time for a Zoom meeting or a phone call, whatever you prefer. And you can talk through anything that you'd like about your job search, whether to take a look at your resume, help prepare for an interview, perhaps do a mock interview, talk through your situation, get some better ideas for networking, or anything else that you are concerned about in your job search. On the national site, at crossroadscareer.org, we have the same thing available to you on a national basis for a guide call is what it's called there. So you can check out the coaching page on our local site or the guide page on the national site, and you can get one-on-one help from a volunteer that is willing to talk to you through whatever questions you might have about your job search. I am really grateful that we have a team that loves to pray for you, and they are praying for the ministry in general in terms of Crossroads. But if you have an individual prayer request, you can put that on our prayer request page on our website, and somebody will pray for you directly. And if you feel like you're really kind of struggling spiritually through this emotional roller coaster of going through a job search, check out the details on our website for soul care. And you can set up a time to meet with one of our counselors to talk with you through whatever it is that you're challenged with in this process. And they're willing to meet with you multiple times. You can set up Zoom meetings with them. So to see the details on the website, you can request there to talk to somebody, and we're happy to get you plugged in so that you can get some additional help. Kind of the meat and potatoes, or where we can go into the most depth of help for your job search, is through our online classes. We start a new one each month. We have one coming up May 5th. Michael Hurley on our team is launching one on May 5th. You can find the details on the website. But we have a multi-week class. They range, depending on who the facilitator is, anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks. And we cover every aspect of a successful job search, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind so that you present yourself as positively as possible. And we do assessments and networking, talk a lot about targeting companies and networking throughout the 8 weeks, resume best practices, interviewing and negotiating, and so much more. There's all kinds of different topics we touch on, and an opportunity to really discuss it with others. And as much as the content is very strong and gives you solid advice on how to do an effective job search, I think equally important is just that weekly light accountability, encouragement, moral support from others, realizing you're not an island and the emotions you're going through aren't unique to you. Everybody struggles with the same things. I think can give you such help in terms of perspective. And throughout the 8 weeks, we also explore what's God's perspective of your job search and your life. And as I mentioned, there's a new one starting each month. Check out our website on the classes page for details of how it works. And you can participate from anywhere. We have people from all over the country that join us on our small group classes online. And there's a new one starting on May 5th. So check that out and sign up online. Join our LinkedIn group. Locally, if you put MN Crossroads Career Network into the search box in LinkedIn, you'll find us. And actually, 2 things will come up when you put that in. One is our company page. And I would ask you to follow that for us, because the more followers we have, the better exposure we get. And it's just about, if people want help, we want them to be aware that we exist. And so that's one thing. But the other thing is our LinkedIn group. And in that is I think we're around 3,000 people that have participated in Crossroads over the years. They're working at companies now, and they decided to stay in the group and just be a willing networking contact for others that are looking for opportunities at those companies. And so you can reach out, look at our membership list, see where they're working, and reach out to them to ask for advice or insight into their organization and any help that they might be willing to offer to help pursue opportunities at that company. And then once you land, it's a great way to give back. Just stay in the group, be available for others to be willing, that might be wanting to reach out to you as well. And so it's a tremendous opportunity to get what you need now and be of help to others later. This webinar and all of our online webinars are posted on our YouTube channel. And so throughout the pandemic, we did only webinars, and all of those are out there, as well as the one a month we do now. And so there's a ton of great content out there, speakers on all kinds of different topics. You can kind of scroll through. Skip Nelson on our team here jokes often about it's a great thing to curl up with your spouse on the couch on a Friday night and watch job search videos. Maybe not what you want to do, but there's a great content out there on YouTube. You can rewind and fast forward. And so you can skip past me and just listen to the best content that's available out there. So check out everything that's there. And as I mentioned, if you want to review this one, I'll have it posted out there before the end of the day today. If you're local here in the Twin Cities area, we have a great event coming up Tuesday, April 28th. Connections and Conversations, an evening with LinkedIn. So we'll have a very brief presentation on how to use LinkedIn in a large setting like this with other people. We're expecting hundreds of people there, and give you then an opportunity to connect with people as much as you can, get some contacts and leads from others, and be a willing contact and lead to others, and enjoy the snacks. 𝙤𝙤𝙪𝙧 is partnering with us on this and providing hors d'oeuvres and making it a great festive atmosphere for us as well. And so be sure to be there. We do ask that you register in advance just so we know how much food we need to order. But you can find the details on our website. On the seminars page, you'll see all the events coming up and listed. So check that out. If you're local here, certainly encourage you to be there on Tuesday evening, starting at 6 p.m. on April 28th. And I think it'll be a very worthwhile event for you to get a lot of new contacts quickly. I just want to acknowledge, as I mentioned, we actually have over 40 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another. I'm grateful for each one of them. They each bring expertise and a heart to help others and help in so many ways. It enables us to do all these different things. And it's we're not able to do this because of one or two people. And so there's a lot of ways that people plug in. And I just want to acknowledge that each one of them contributes significantly to what we are able to offer. Nobody's getting a paycheck. Everybody does it because they have a desire to help others. If you don't have a church home, I certainly encourage you to visit one of ours, Grace Church in Eden Prairie or Woodbury Lutheran Church. We do stream online, so you can watch that from anywhere, but get in person and get plugged into a church. It's a great way to certainly get good biblical teaching, but also and grow and be drawn to God in many ways. But I think that sense of community, and Grace Church, it's a large church. We have over 115 different ministries that can be service to you in anything that you're going through in life. And at whatever stage of life you're in, whatever challenges you may be facing, there's something there to be of relevance and help. And so get plugged in if you don't have a church home now. But I think having that sense of community is so important, especially when you don't have that community at work and it's easy to get isolated during a job search. Our next seminar is going to be in person at Grace Church in Eden Prairie, 7:30 a.m. Thursday morning, May 7th. And we have Beth Elliott is going to talk about networking and how to take that from blank stares you might get from others to actually getting referrals. And she's got great insight on that topic. If you can make it locally here, I really encourage you to join us for that. It'll definitely be a worthwhile topic. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. I hope it was worthwhile for you this morning. Our networking group is going to be meeting here in 3 minutes. You can still sign up online and join that on another Zoom meeting if you want to participate. So go to our website at mncrossroads.com and look for the networking information, and you can still participate in that, or you do that on a future week. But glad to have you here this morning. Hope you join us for other things. Better yet, I hope you land a job and you don't have to join us for other things. But I'm glad you were here this morning, and hope it was impactful for you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And hopefully I can